Let me go and do my thing. Doing the retweets and the whatnots. Let's share that. And let's share that. And get that back. I need to move my chat lower so I can see it. At some point, I'm going to have to show off the whole desk because this is getting kind of silly how I have to set up for this thing. But that means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all types and persuasions and ages and sizes, welcome to another Monday morning tech chat show. A helicopter just flew right over my apartment complex. It's kind of distracting. It's really loud. I hope you don't hear it too badly. But yes, we are live for another Monday morning tech chat show. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, SomeGadgetGuy, and this is one of those shows where we talk about the tech. I like talking about the tech, and if you've been subscribed to me in the past or you're following this on on the Periscopes, on the Twitches, on the YouTubes, then you probably like the tech too. So, we've got a lot of tech topics to talk about this week, and what I like to do for Monday morning is to get our week started off right, spending a little bit of extra time talking about some stories over the last week which might have slipped through the cracks. And of course, last week I was traveling with very intermittent internet connection, so I wasn't able to dig into some of the more recent tech stories from 2 weeks ago. I want to spend a little time catching back up and getting back up to speed with some of the stuff that you guys have been requesting I talk about, especially from the tweets. So I've got a number of Twitter comments that we're going to get to today. I already see a bunch of people popping into some live chat. I see Aditya, I see Hadi, I see Sharil. Sharil's asking the real important question. Here's a question, Juan. Do you have pants today? So it's supposed to be like 106 degrees in the valley today. It's already like 85 at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So I am currently not wearing pants, but I am wearing sport shorts, which I will not model for you on camera. I will do us all the favor of not modeling anything right now. See, what's kind of messed up about summer is... Oh, from Kyle Netherwood, do you have different lighting today? No, I just didn't turn on the Christmas tree lights. I actually unplugged them today because I'm going to be doing a little rewiring, a little resetting, and I have a bunch of recessed lighting up above me, and I'm going to be going to color-changing bulbs. So I'm going to be kind of gutting the lighting in a Gadget Lab and just doing a little reset. So we'll see how that all gets put back together. But I couldn't get the Christmas tree lights back up in time to showcase it on the show. Yeah, Sharil, that was an inside joke between me and my Twitter followers. I was talking about how hot it was and how I may or may not be wearing pants for this podcast. And it turns out I'm not wearing pants. But the messed up thing about summer is that's usually my time where I start putting on a whole bunch of weight again. Just working out when it's 100, 105, 110 degrees in the valley is such a... I just dog it so bad. So I've this last week, after eating my way through New Mexico, between Gallup and Albuquerque, Marie and Lex and we hit all of our favorite restaurants while doing a little traveling to see some family. And I came back feeling kind of bloated. So I'm back on my workout routine. I'm going to get strong again. I'm already, kind of going to start showing off the guns here, but I'm not going to do you guys the disservice of modeling my little sport shorts. Right now, it's just all about hitting the exercise bike because I just can't. I can't go outside. I got up at like 6:30 this morning just to hit the bike, and it was super gross. So we do have some housekeeping to go through. The thing I want to showcase first and foremost, right up front, is some gaming housekeeping. I'm gonna go into screen share right quick. I'm gonna turn down the music here. So, folks, what I have streaming on the screen right now is a game called Forged Battalions. So, Forged Battalion, singular, not plural. So, I am crazy excited about this game. I've been playing it for a couple weeks now, maybe almost a couple months now. And this is a real-time strategy, command and conquer style game, which was developed from former Westwood Studio developers. So Westwood Studio was the studio that originally created Command and Conquer. And so this is sort of the spiritual successor to old school sci-fi based RTS combat. I am so stoked for this game. So one of the reasons why I am so stoked for this game is because I spent some time over the weekend. I finally got into the early access for Command & Conquer Rivals, EA's attempt to make RTS mobile, real-time strategy game for phones, and it's pretty terrible. It is real bad. Actually, I'll fire up some of my screen share from that too. But I played for about 45 minutes. I shared my experiences actually doing that game, and I was very disappointed. There are some glimmers, some good ideas for gameplay, but the big problem is it's all wrapped up in this EA nonsense of building progression around random number generating loot boxes and crates. And this is terrible. This is exactly not how I want to go about playing this game. I mean, this is a 50-minute video, and randomly clicking, I clicked exactly to a point where I went straight into a loot box. That's terrible. That's how much loot box and random number generating and gambling mechanics are a core of this game. You're going to spend more time trying to fight cooldown clocks and random number generating. I think it's a slot machine. Anytime that there's a random number generating event for a piece of a material to help player progression, I don't care if you get money out of the slot machine, that's gambling. I think that should be made illegal. I think that should be against the law. So super frustrating playing Command & Conquer Rivals because there are some glimmers, some little hints of some good gameplay in there. I played one match. I lost this match against my second human opponent, and it was really exciting. I think I lost because troop movement is very inaccurate when you're using your finger to move your troops from grid to grid, but it was a good match. It was a fun match. But then you're wrapped up in a cooldown clock, and then, you got to get fuel to unlock this loot crate. And then you also have to have credits to get this upgrade card, and if you get 3 upgrade cards, then your infantry is more powerful, and you can speed up the progression by using premium crystals to get more credits to speed up your upgrade card. I mean, it's terrible. I hate it. I hate it so much because there could be a fun game in there, but it's just so much EA BS that I can't stand it. So, short story, incredibly long. During this podcast today, I'm going to give away a copy of Forged Battalion because Forged Battalion is awesome, and I just realized that I got a free copy of it. Not a free copy. I mean, technically I paid for it. But every month I subscribe to the Humble Bundle, and you get, I think it's like $13 a month, something like that. And you get over $100 worth of Steam codes. So it's a subscription service, kind of like a Loot Crate. But instead of getting plasticky doodads that you're just going to throw away after a couple months, you get Steam codes. So if you want to pad out your Steam library really quickly, it's a great way to do it. And you get usually one big game and then a bunch of smaller indie titles. And Forged Battalion was in my Humble Bundle this month. I already own it. I've already convinced Fat Produce, Andrew, in the live chat to get it too. He's in the chat. We should start a Forged Battalion clan. So I'm going to give away a Steam copy randomly to someone in the live chat on Periscope and in YouTube, because those are the two where I can see the live chat during this podcast. If you're picking up this podcast after the fact, I do apologize that you will not be a part of my giveaway. But it's like a $20 game, so it's not like a huge loss. But that's why you want to watch me live, I guess. So that was a lot of rambling. That was a ton of rambling because I am super excited about Forged Battalion. And then also, if you are curious about something like the Humble Bundle, I actually have a link on SomeGadgetGuy.com. If you go to support SomeGadgetGuy, I'll actually do it on camera right now. If you go to SomeGadgetGuy.com, my terrible, awful, no good website, and you scroll down to support SomeGadgetGuy, you can sign up for your own Humble Bundle. And every time you click on that link for Humble Bundle right here through the website or on any of my videos where I've got it linked, then it kicks me a little extra cash too. It's an affiliate link. You get awesome games every month. Like I said, usually one major big AAA title and a bunch of smaller indie titles, games like Forged Battalion, which is awesome. And then it also helps support production on this channel. So Let's get into some tech news because I don't want to go down the deep dive of repeating how much I did not enjoy playing Command & Conquer Rivals. I have a 50-minute video where I almost cried at one point that I was so frustrated that this is the route that EA picked for one of my all-time favorite game franchises, but it only serves to reinforce why I am so excited to be supporting former Westwood devs who left EA and went and made their own Command & Conquer style RTS game, Forged Battalion. If you don't win it through this podcast, please go check it out because it's such a labor of love. It's such an amazing addition to sort of the CNC universe of games, even though it's not true Command & Conquer. And then it's got some fun updates too, like a really aggressive tech tree. So you've got a lot of replayability there. It's good times. So let's get into some news. Let's get this over here. Oh, from Sharil Abdul, is this only for monthly? Do they do affiliate links for special bundles? So I actually have only just recently started using the Humble Bundle affiliate link. I think I have some kind of promo code that I can dig into that might be for special bundles. But as far as I know, that the real affiliate link is for the monthly service, $12 a month. It's kind of a mystery. You don't know what you're going to get. But so far, every Humble Bundle I've gotten so far has had one game that was totally worth the $12, and then all the rest of them have just been gravy. Sometimes it's a couple games, sometimes it's only one, but it's been a huge bang for buck, and my Steam library is so full of games that I will probably never make it to that I should probably be giving away more Steam codes. I should probably be doing that. I don't know. Drop me a comment. Should I be giving away more games? Let me know. I think it's fun, but this one was especially close to my heart with what I streamed over the weekend because I love real-time strategy. I love Command & Conquer, and I'm so mad at EA right now. So the first bit of news that I want to get to is also gaming-related, and I, for one, welcome our future robot overlords. I'm just going to say it now. I have no problems selling out humanity. Humans are dumb meatbags, and robots are the awesome. And this is coming by way of CNET. I've been following this loosely before. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. AI smashes human beings at Dota 2 again. So this is from the first paragraph of the story. OpenAI 5, the artificial intelligence bot that previously destroyed humans in the video game Dota 2, has just undergone another benchmark test, taking on semi-professional Dota 2 players ranked in the 99.95 percentile in the world. Good news for the humans, we fared a little better this time. Not really. That last sentence there, not true, CNET. So here's what happened. And they mention this in the next paragraph, but from following this, I was trying to keep up with this story because this kind of AI progression is really exciting. I would highly recommend catching the documentary on AlphaGo, Google's project to make a Go playing AI. And I don't want to spoil it, but just the expectations of one of the top-ranked human players in the world playing a very artistic and expressive game against a machine, and just seeing how everyone's expectations were subverted. It's almost like Rian Johnson wrote real life. So this is a little scarier still. Dota 2 is one of these lane fantasy games. You've got teams. You've got to pick your characters, your little avatars well. You've got to really focus on that teamwork and then making sure that you can manage resources and, powers as you try to attack enemy sides. So it's like you've got a map and you've got to get to one end of the map. The other team is trying to get to your end of the map. That is a gross oversimplification of what a Dota actually resembles. But OpenAI 5 has been programmed and has been learning to play on its own. And this is one of the things we talked about a couple weeks ago where, every day, OpenAI 5 can play 180 years of games against itself in trying to get better and better and better and better. So its ability to self-evolve, like apparently, if again, I'm grossly oversimplifying here, what they've done is they've taken an artificial intelligence program, an AI learning program, and they just sort of dumped it into the game, and they let it figure out, based on some very basic parameters of what success looks like, how to play its own style of game. And then they just flick on the fast forward switch, and it can evolve almost 200 years for every real day that us meatbags would be playing the game. So apparently, 5 of the top players in the world, 5 of the top semi-professional players in the world, just got absolutely crushed in the first 2 games in a 2 out of 3 match. The only way that the humans were able to beat this AI was by letting the crowd, the audience, pick the hold on, let me read it. So the audience picked the team of heroes that the AI had to play with, and the audience severely handicapped the AI with its hero selection, and only then did the humans manage to beat this AI. So yeah, that's crazy. Increasingly, when it comes to this type of endeavor, after Go, I really didn't think there really isn't any type of game that an AI can't be better at humans at with only a couple days of preparation. If you could grind 24/7, 365, no sleep, no fatigue, no resources but electricity on one game for 200 years, how much better than your average human would you be? Now, every day you can beat a human player 200 years worth of training while they had 1 day. And usually that 1 day for a human player is going to be 8 hours of training max. And that's with heavy fatigue. Not all of it will be the most substantive learning into how to improve at that game. It's insane. So this is the beginning of the end. Humans are a doomed species. As soon as we start flipping on those AI switches, the robots will all be better than us in a matter of minutes. And then the robots will start programming themselves, and they'll be able to iterate and improve their own software to the tune of hundreds of years of improvements every day that we corporeal forms are around. And so like I mentioned at the top of this story, I, for one, welcome our new robot, or our future robot overlords. From Sherrill, Dota is kind of like chess, finite move to capture the enemy's token. From Aditya Anil, but the bots don't have Doritos and Mountain Dew. Gamer fuel. Just wait until the Bicentennial Man. That Isaac Asimov story, and they'll figure out how to use organic energy generation through consuming carbohydrates, and then we're even more doomed, because once the robots get their hands on gamer fuel like that, then we are truly done for. Steve Desroches, I finished Detroit Become Human, and I welcome our robot overlords. Yep, I think all of us are. From Taylor Meek, sorry, this is a little off topic. From Taylor Meek, thank you for showing me how to use a Blue Yeti properly. You're very welcome. I still get angry comments all the time from folks. He's like, "Oh, everybody knows how to use the Yeti. What are you talking about?" And I can still keep pointing. Almost every day, I find someone who's misusing the Blue Yeti. So I'm always happy to share that. The joy of proper mic technique. From Sherrill, oh man, Bicentennial Man, a great Robin Williams movie. I'd also highly recommend the book. I think that was one of the few times that Isaac Asimov actually delivered some heart and some character. I love Isaac Asimov stories because they're amazing logic puzzles. Like, his robot stories are all about the logic of the 3 laws of robotics. But it's rare that he wrote really compelling characters. He was just really trying to fight the Frankenstein complex in science fiction. And so if you liked the Robin Williams movie, I think you should definitely read that story. It's way better. Bicentennial Man, the movie and the story are way better than their attempts at making iRobot into a film. So that's just my little Isaac Asimov plug for you for today. Let's get this over here from Sharil Abdul Raham. I'm kind of looking forward to Blue under Logitech as a tangent. Following that tangent from Tyler Meeks there, Taylor Meek. I'm getting your name wrong. That sucks. That was an interesting bit of news that we talked about briefly on Newegg Now last Thursday, which is microphone manufacturer Blue just got bought out by Logitech. And Logitech also bought out Astro gaming headsets. So now when you think of a high-end desktop setup, the accessories that you would want for keyboard, mouse, headset, webcam, microphones, they've got a really formidable offering now, all under the Logitech umbrella. I'll be really curious to see how that plays out. It does make me a little sad. I actually came to Blue microphones from mics like the Spark, and then eventually moving up into the Kiwi and the Blue Bottle. So we're talking $1,000 to $3,000 large diaphragm condenser studio grade microphones. And that's what I loved Blue for, is they weren't trying to make the play like Neumann with Sennheiser and Neumann, where they're the studio standard and they're the most consistent. Blue microphones were really funky and colorful both in the design of the microphone and the recording sound of the microphone. So they could be kind of hyped up. Some of them could be really aggressive. A few of them I thought were a little harsh, but they made gorgeous microphones at that high-end tier. But they found all of their success making USB kit. So, I don't know how many billions of Snowballs and Yetis they've sold, but that's really where they were making most of their money. And every time they would try and push those microphones a little more upscale, they had a few, like Nessie was a higher end version of what a Snowball could be. Raspberry is a little bit more portable, but it was also supposed to be kind of a higher end of what a Snowball could be. Those things never really seemed to take on as much popularity as like Yeti, or especially Snowball. Snowball, cheap, plug it in. It's a sphere. It looks kind of cute. And you're podcasting. Huzzah. So I think Logitech will do really well with that faction of Blue's microphone recording arm, but I hope we'll still see some progress, some attention, some continuation of their really high-end recording solutions. Their vocals mic is crystal and sparkling and just very vibrant and delicious. The Kiwi is so much fun to play with as a sort of a competitor to the U87. I mean, again, I know I'm being silly because we're talking about $3,000 microphones, but it's just really good times. So we'll see how it goes. But I think it's ultimately really good news, especially for Logitech fans, because your ability to outfit a game-playing, streaming, podcasting, vlogging, Twitch channel in one button press, the combo pack that they'll have for all of that is going to be pretty epic. Steve DeRoche. Yeah, last week we played Overcooked 2, and it was a terrific disaster. Trisha and I were not communicating well. It was pretty sad. From Kyle Netherwood, might end up as a nice bundle. All your peripherals in one Logitech box. See, that would be a loot box, a loot crate I would really love to open. Push one button on Logitech.com and have a full service, ready to go headset, keyboard, mouse, mic arm, like the mic arm I podcast this show from, all ready to go, all ready to set up. That could be really compelling. I think that's going to be huge for gamers and for podcasters and vloggers and stuff like that. I just hope they don't completely abandon the recording side. The high-end recording side was really great. Let's see. Let's get this out of the way here. Let's move on to the next story here. And this one's been really frustrating, guys, because I'm still in the middle of piecing out my full next build. I did upgrade my video card, but I need to just gut Frankenbox and do something totally fresh. And Threadripper 2, there was an embargo on Threadripper 2 stories. So a bunch of outlets, like I've got the Reddit post up on the screen share right now. So we've got Anintech, Tom's Hardware, Overclocked, Tech Report, Gamers Nexus, Video Cards, Hardware Unboxed, SciSoft, and then the official AMD press release. So I get stoked the embargo for Threadripper 2, this is exactly the chipset that I'm looking at upgrading to. I'm probably not going to go up to the 32 core version, but there's a 24 core version which looks like it's going to be right up my alley. I'm cruising on Anantech. Look at this. They've got the 2990WX. It's an $1,800 32 core mega beast, and they've got one benchmark because this is just a tease. This is just them doing the pre-order and the pre-sale advertising for AMD. And so I'm disappointed because Anantech is my go-to. I love the guys over at Anantech, and they've got this one graph. Look how much faster it is in this one multi-threaded benchmark against the Core i9-7980. Whoa, it's like almost twice as fast on this one bar graph, but there aren't any real reviews. This was an embargo just for the unboxing of a CPU, and that's a bummer. I'm super bummed about that. So I think I'm going to go with the 2970. That's the 24 core Threadripper 2. That's a $1,300 CPU. I'm gonna have to get a new cooler. I'm gonna have to get a new case. My old NZXT case just is getting a little long in the tooth. Great airflow still, but the more radiators I put into that thing, the more the less space I have for things like giant graphics cards and big CPUs. But it's just kind of a bummer because I was hoping for more actual news on this. And we've got a ton of blog posts, we've got a ton of videos, and no information, no real substance. And so I don't like it when companies, even a company that I am really looking forward to giving money to, I really don't like it when companies just play this hype game. Shiril, it's the hype train. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this. From Ronald Collins, a new power supply especially. I just stepped up my power supply too. So I've got an EVGA Platinum, 1,000 watt. So between a Threadripper and a 1080 Ti, I should be able to cover my power draw on this new power supply. Fingers crossed I don't let out the magic smoke of really expensive components. So yeah. Shiril, the new AMD cooler looks good though, but it looks like a Cooler Master cooler. And then Steve DeRoche, it looks like the new cooler was made by Cooler Master. From Farid, how big is the heatsink? How big will the heatsink be for the 32 core? A fridge? Well, I love it because, people have been so snarky about this. This is a huge piece of CPU. Basically, they just took two Ryzen CPUs and stapled them together. But it's still running better than Intel's fake 5 gigahertz chip, which requires liquid nitrogen. So no, I'm going to be going Team Red for my next build. I wasn't particularly happy with how my current chipset was handled on Intel land. I have a 5820, which is really old now, especially for trying to render 4K video like I've been doing. It was great when I was only doing 1080p at 60 frames per second, but UHD is definitely killing this thing. So that'll be the big move. From Brandon Hall, is the 1950X even worth buying now? So I still think it is, if you're doing some savvy comparison shopping. Again, this is why I'm upset, is I was hoping to see more substantial benchmarking from these major tech outlets. Because then you could say, oh, hey, if there's a price cut on the 1950 and the 1950 slots in between, some of the newer chipset variants, then that could be a good buy. That could be a really good buy, especially if you don't need 32 cores. Many of us, most of us, don't need 32 cores. I actually probably don't even need 24. I'm just hoping to future-proof a little bit better than I did with my 5820K, my 6-core CPU. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, if you do some savvy shopping, if you do some legwork, then yeah, I think a 1950 would still be a perfectly fine buy today. Especially because this is the other frustrating thing, is the most expensive variation, the Threadripper 2 2990, is going to be out. Oh, let me see if I can find that chart. I don't know if the pre-order Let me see if I can find it again. I can't find it. But the 2990, the $1,800 chip is going to be out in about a week. Then one of the other lower end Threadrippers is going to be out at the end of the month, but the Threadripper I want is not going to be out until October. So that's more time to save up. But I was really hoping to pull the trigger on a rebuild closer to my birthday in the middle of the month. But now I've got to wait it out. From Gabaletta, question is, in what scenario you need that kind of horsepower? So from Gabaletta, right now, my video rendering times are not insignificant. So I shoot 100 megabit per second UHD video. They call it 4K, but it's UHD. It's 3840 by 2160. So 4 times the resolution of 1080p. And then I will almost always do some light graphic overlay, like for watermark. I very rarely do the kind of color correction, contrast, scene correction that I should be doing. I usually shoot pretty flat and then just leave it pretty flat, and then just lots of punch-ins and cuts. Maybe a little zoom in, zoom out, because you've got enough resolution to play with. It doesn't look terrible if you blow it up by like 5%. And my video rendering times with an Intel 5820K are usually 2-to-1. So what I'm hoping for is Threadripper is going to make the editing process easier, because the horsepower just to scrub the video is pretty substantial, and then the rendering times should improve too. But then what I'm also looking at is hopefully that this is a buy that lasts several years of 4K. Maybe even at some point moving up to 8K if I ever grab a camera that shoots 8K footage. That's what I'm hoping will set me aside for a while. I was hoping that my 5820K would grow to UHD. It really hasn't, especially after all of the Meltdown and Spectre threats. All of those updates really did take a toll on my system. So I lost probably about 10 to 15% computing power after all of those patches ran through and all of those updates ran. It really did slow down my system. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Most people out there, you're going to be well better served price-performance ratio just looking at a regular Ryzen chip, not going Threadripper, especially if you're doing a gaming-focused build. Now, if you excuse me for just a second, I need to take a gratuitous merch plug and drink some water from my brand new awesome Mkbhd mug right here. So I'm just going to drink some water right now. For those of you listening to the audio version of this podcast, this is going to be terrible ASMR. What a delicious mug to drink water out of. That was pretty special. I wonder where someone might be able to acquire one of those mugs. It's a mystery, but not really. DTL Mega Pickles! Renato Laporte, I lost 40% of my RAM since the last Chrome update. Damn you, Chrome! All right, let's move on. Again, I am super stoked for Threadripper. I am majorly bummed that we don't have better news about what Threadripper can do. Farid, oh, that slurp. I am super, I think I really do have a bad case of misophonia, where I get irrationally upset about mouth and chewing noises. I have a hard time going to movies because of all the people who seem to think it's a good idea to breathe through the same orifice what with they chew with their mouths open. Not that I'm bitter about it. So I take some small bit of glee in sharing slurping and sipping sounds. Yeah, so it's good times. Steve DeRoche, I don't think 8 gigabytes of RAM on a PC is enough anymore if you use Chrome. Kyle Netherwood, Firefox for the win. I have definitely switched over almost exclusively to Firefox, both on PC and on Android. All right, another story coming up, Ars Technica. Let's get into a little political chat, something that's not terrible from the FCC. Who'd have thunk it? FCC sides with Google Fiber over Comcast with new pro-competition rule. Now, this one's a little wonky. One touch make ready prevents big ISPs from delaying competitors' construction, from the first two paragraphs. The Federal Communications Commission today approved new rules that could let Google Fiber and other new internet service providers gain faster access to utility poles. The FCC's One-Touch Make-Ready rules will let companies attach wires to utility poles without waiting for the other users of the pole to move their own wires. Google Fiber says its deployment has stalled in multiple cities because Comcast and AT&T take a long time to get poles ready for new attachers. One-Touch Make-Ready rules let new attachers make all of the necessary wire adjustments themselves. So, let's get that back. So, I'm still super mad. Ajit is still a shill. He is still doing terrible things with the FCC, and gutting net neutrality is going to have an impact on this story too. But in the interim, this is one teeny tiny little baby step towards fixing something that I think both liberals and conservatives can agree on. This is one area where both sides should be excited about a push towards deregulating how local communities can serve up broadband and make it a monopoly, a local monopoly for one carrier. And this is one of those rules that gets in the way of competition. So, this rule only affects privately owned telephone poles, but it basically states, in the past, if you were Google and you wanted to string fiber over telephone poles, you had to wait for Comcast to move wires around if they were in your way. You were not allowed to pick up the wire to string your wire and put their wire back down. That was a big no-no. This is like preschool rules. Is Timmy playing with that toy right now? Well, then you need to wait your turn. Excuse me. And this type of shenanigan could take months to play out. According to the current rules, Comcast has up to 90 days to move the wire themselves before Google is allowed access to a pole. And I'm sure that there's probably also some sort of like appeal on that, like, oh, well, we're doing construction, or it's a top wire, so we need even longer, and Google's still not allowed to touch that wire on its own. So that's silly, and that's terrible. But that's one of the issues where major corporations have been able to sway and curry favor with local city-state politicians to make sure that there are as many barriers to entry. There are as many barriers to free competition, to healthy competition as they can. And basically, companies give up or they sue and then they don't go anywhere because who can sue Comcast? And then Comcast can keep dumping tens of thousands of dollars into local campaigns and local elections to make sure that they still get this favorable treatment. So this is a great step. A great step in the right direction for more competition at the local level. This is one of those things, like, we need to look at all of those laws, those state laws that prevent new ISPs from entering markets, and anything that we can do to break up this sort of monopoly or duopoly that most areas have. I don't have competition in my area. I have to do business with Spectrum. They're the only fast game in town, and I can pay the same amount, which I'm paying way too much for what speeds I have to offer. They have to offer right now, but I can pay the same amount for DSL. So that's not real competition. That's like saying Sprint is real competition for Verizon. That's not real. So, the problem with this, though, is these rules won't apply universally. Some cities and some states have private ownership of these poles, and some sidestep the FCC guidelines and have their own public ownership of these poles. So that actually might stand in the way of Google rolling out fiber in certain areas because of local politicians having control over who gets to access telephone poles. That needs to go. That kind of regulatory action needs to be standardized, and we need to put some pressure on those local city and state politicians because we can see how easily they can be co-opted by major corporations. The other issue here, and this is circling back to why gutting net neutrality kind of sucks. Here, let me get back to this part of the story from Ars Technica. Oh, I think I might have skipped over it. Hold on, let me find it. And Oh, let me actually read this part of it too. So previously, existing poll users had to perform make-ready work within 60 days or within 90 days for work on upper parts of a pole. So they could wait 3 months. You could just, Google Fiber wants to roll out in your area, you can put them on pause for 3 months. So those timelines are being shortened to 30 days and 60 days. Still not great, but a step in the right direction. If an existing poll user doesn't meet that deadline, then the new attacher will be allowed to perform all the work themselves. So here's what's frustrating, though, is gutting net neutrality means that we don't have Title II regulation over poles and conduits. So that means because we don't rate the internet as a telecommunication service and we don't apply common carrier rules like we would for telephone lines, like the internet is more important than telephones, but we don't consider the internet to be politically as important as telephones. ISPs that are broadband only will not get the benefit of this new rule. So we've been making all of this. This is a positive step. If you want to be a competing internet service provider, you now don't have to wait for Comcast to put you on pause for 3 months to string your cable or your fiber on a telephone pole, unless you don't offer phone service. You have to offer phone service to be considered an ISP worthy of this new rule. So you can't just walk in and be an internet-only supplier. And this is one of the reasons why Google Fiber is a TV, phone, and internet service, is because that's the only way our government will recognize the validity of their business moves in the markets they're currently serving. If they only offered internet, well, the internet now is only a communication service, not a telecommunication service. And so they don't get these new rules. They don't get the benefit of these new protections. So it's forcing businesses to carry services that they probably wouldn't want to have to carry just so they can also play nice on these telephone poles, which is ridiculous. From Renato Laporte. Phone service? OMG, do you need to support telegraph as well? How about fax? Oh my gosh, this is so crazy. Aditya Anil, Fiber includes Project Fi as well. This is exactly why I think Google made the push into Project Fi like they did, is tying all of those services together. It wouldn't work with just Google Voice. Imagine, I think Google wanted to string fiber and then offer up a service like Voice. They had to strike all of the deals to become an NVNO to offer some kind of phone service, and this is one of the reasons why, is to circumvent these dumb, barbaric, ancient rules that have been foisted on us by conservatives to say, oh, well, no, phone service, that has common carrier protections. That's Title II regulated. But the internet, no, we can't have those types of protections for consumers. Burp, 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 burp. Fat produce. We need regulation for smoke signals. Well, in California, we're pretty upset about anything that generates smoke and or fire. Gabaletta, because you need them phone lines for your AOL internet connection. Oh, that was a good one. Thanks, Gabaletta. I needed that. So, ultimately, one step in the right direction. I am happy to see the FCC. This was the right ruling on this individual case, but it's all wrapped up in a greater climate where this is still uglier than it needs to be. We could be enjoying much better competition and be on the road to rolling out fiber in more areas through healthy business competition if we could get our politicians to agree with 80% of the voting population, 80% of the population in the United States, that they want these kinds of rules and they want these kinds of protections in place. So good job, FCC. A lot of ground to recover, a lot of fixes to employ after this current administration is booted from office. So I do want to talk about another story here real quick from The Guardian. Reddit user data compromised in sophisticated hack. I use the Reddits. Have you guys been using the Reddits? because hackers accessed usernames, passwords, and email addresses in one of the world's largest website breaches. This is from the article on the Guardian. I apologize if you're watching the live feed, because one of the top stories on The Guardian is someone talking about if they're addicted to masturbation. Reddit has suffered a data breach compromising usernames, passwords, and email addresses of groups of users, the site has confirmed. While the size of the breach is yet to be clarified, Reddit has said 2 data sets had been accessed by hackers, including one from 2007 containing account details and all public and private posts between 2005 and May of 2007. The second data store included logs and databases linked to Reddit's Daily Digest emails, which was accessed between 3 and 17 June this year. The data includes usernames and email addresses linked to those accounts. And so from Huan Jung, we have the same first name. I don't know how you pronounce your last name. I apologize, Juan. Another website to change my password. Yeah, you probably should. This, especially if you've been a long-time Reddit user, the first breach is the scarier one. So if you've been a Reddit user since 2007, yeah, I would get in there and shift some things up. The more recent Reddit users, they have access to your account name and email address. So they know who you are, but it doesn't sound like any compromising information was necessarily taken out of that, more just logs and databases. What's also a little scary here is the method of intrusion. It looks like whoever implemented this attack on Reddit was able to circumvent Reddit employees' SMS two-factor authentication. So that's another thing which we're going to have to be paying more and more attention to coming up. You know, two-factor is, so I'm sure most of you who are listening to this podcast or watching this live stream know two-factor authentication is a way to verify yourself after putting in your password. So you go to a website, you put in your username, you put in your password, you hit login, and then it sends a special code to your phone number through a text message, and you take that code and then you put it in under your password, and that finally lets you into the service or into the website. It's a good bit of security. That is still way more secure than just having a username and password. Please, in your circles of family and friends, get more people using some kind of two-factor authenticator service. If it's SMS-based, if it's Google Authenticator, there are other services you can check out too. Please do that. Please keep that going. That is better for you than not having anything. But it is really concerning if we're finding cyber attacks that are finding ways of circumventing two-factor authentication. So it's going to be an arms race. What we need are companies to be more clear and more transparent than waiting 2 months. 2 months. This happened in June, and it's now the first week of August, and we're just now getting confirmation from Reddit that there's been this kind of attack. Over those 2 months, what kind of information was accessed? What kind of information was utilized? And were any accounts compromised because of it? That's not fast enough. We need to be better about that. In the tech community, especially, for how volatile a service Reddit is, for how compromised it already is in terms of user information, data, and then becoming sort of a bot farm for nefarious deeds. That's not okay. That's really frustrating. So hopefully we can fix that. But along the way, we need to be alerted to, and we need to know the details of these types of attacks, so we can also augment our own security. Maybe there's something else we should be using instead of SMS-based two-factor authentication. Maybe there are other ways of verifying. Maybe there are future methods of biometric security that we could be employing. As long as we have this sort of fog of security, like we think we're safe because we use two-factor, not understanding that two-factor can be compromised like this, then we're not really safe. I don't believe you ever have good security through obfuscating the details of an attack like this. I think you only get good security when you immediately detail the exploit, explain how it happened, and then those of us who are security minded can go and see how can I improve my security infrastructure. From Kyle Netherwood, not affected this time, but I remember Yahoo got hit a few years ago. I mean, I think we're going to be seeing these stories more and more frequently. as to getting at user information. We've made this kind of user data extremely profitable to traffic, and it's just too tasty not to try and get in there. From Sherrill, this is the key fob method, and Google just introduced its own two-factor authenticator key fob. Okay. Money is trying to get me to say a word that is a dumb meme on Reddit. So Money, I'm not going to join you on that. Sorry. Gabaletta, something like Microsoft did with their Authenticator app for their services. Again, I mean, there are some good resources out there, and I have been using Google Authenticator, but I need to update it. Nicholas Cincinnati, Vampire Phone. It requires a drop of blood for every login. That's, we might get to a point, man. My wife is a type 1 diabetic, and she's actually on some really cool cyborg hardware to manage her blood sugar, but every now and then she still needs to prick her finger. Instead of the fingerprint sensor, like on the back of your phone, it's just got a little needle prick. So every time you want to turn on your phone, you push it there, ow, and then you can get into your phone. I love it. Let's do it. I think we should sell that to Samsung. We should definitely sell that to Apple. I don't know about Google. I don't know if I want them having all of my genetic information. So maybe I'll do the Firefox blood prick login, and then I'll be way safer by diversifying all of that. From Aditya Anil, cyborg hardware. Yeah, my wife has a sensor and a pump, and so that's what helps her manage her blood sugar. It's really cool. I don't know if she'll be upset with me sharing the story, but she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes pretty late in life. She was already 20 or 21 when she was diagnosed with type 1. And we were together for a little while before she got this hardware. And so she would just have to give herself regular shots, like a long-acting shot and fast-acting shots every time she ate. And we met up with an educator that convinced her to try out this pump, and she was kind of mortified because she would have this little site attached to her, and it's basically like a bionic pancreas that helps deliver insulin into her bloodstream. And she was really sensitive about it around me. Like maybe I would be upset by this, or I would find her less attractive or something. And it was this great. It was one of those, like, without even thinking about it, like I didn't do this by design. It's not like, oh, this is what I'll say to make her feel better. This was legitimately how I felt, where I was like, no, you don't understand, babe. My wife is going to be the bionic woman. You're going to have a cyborg pancreas. This is the coolest thing I think I've ever heard of. And that seemed to help calm her down that this was the right way to go. And she's been using it for years. She's upgraded to different models. She's had different sensors at her disposal. But it was one of those things, like, I actually did good by being a geek. Like, not only did it not bother me, I was incredibly fascinated by that kind of medical tech. And so that's the story I always share. But if we could start using that kind of technology to better safeguard our electronics. No, it's a terrible idea, especially if you ever need to use like a community computer and your login is your blood, and you're like, that's a perfect way to share a bunch of diseases. So that's pretty great. From Juan, you're walking on dangerous territory here, sharing your wife's story without her permission. I don't know that she'll be too bothered by that. Kyle Netherwood, my grandmother's got bionic hips, which is pretty cool. Dude, I mean, some of this, my dad's had some knee surgeries. He might need to have a hip done. There's some really cool med tech stuff happening coming up. So we've got two more things that I want to get to one news, and then there is a story, and then some other. Renato Laporte, you don't get to say that every day. I did good by being a geek. Again, it's one of those, like, it was one of those relationship building moments where I think we really got to see who the other was. In the first year or two of a relationship, you still haven't fully kind of invested. You're not 100% yourself. And in a moment of just nerd vomit, I told my wife I thought it would be cool if she were a cyborg. So nerdy. It's so dumb. But it was the right thing to say to her in that time, in being completely honest with her. And I felt like it was one of those we grew as a couple moments. I definitely want to get to this one. This is super sensitive. Just the fact that I put it in the title of this video means I'm probably going to get a bunch of really frustrating comments on it. Let's cue this up here. So, this is from Business Insider. Apple, Facebook, and Spotify shut down InfoWars' Alex Jones. So, this is from the article. Apple has scrubbed nearly all of Alex Jones' InfoWars podcasts from iTunes and its podcast app. The company said it did not tolerate hate speech, adding that creators who violated its guidelines would be punished. And soon after Apple removed Jones's podcast, Facebook and Spotify also shut down The Conspiracy Theorist. All right. I have to say, for as much as I despise actors like Alex Jones, I'm somewhat a little troubled by this move. The institutions that we take as public resources, public entities, but they're still privately owned. A Twitter, a Facebook, Spotify, Apple. There's nothing to stop someone from picking up the Alex Jones RSS feed and putting it into their podcast app and getting his podcasts. But we can all be honest, there's a huge contingent of consumers who likely only use some sort of front-end service to find and to consume podcasts, if that's Google, if that's Apple, or if it's some other type of podcasting platform, an individual app or service, or Spotify, which has been trying to get more into this kind of streaming and stuff. Renato Laporte, this is the guy who gets upset about gay frogs. And from Gabaletta, the problem with this is the whole argument with free speech. So this is where we're running into some corporate versus public conflict. Nothing about this move violates Alex Jones' rights as it pertains to free speech. Free speech is the government not kicking down your door because you said something naughty. The government not, throwing you in prison because you criticized the government. Free speech sort of stops at your political protections for being able to say what you want. It doesn't really have anything to do with the distribution of that speech beyond giving money to politicians, because that's technically speech now too. But what we've come to build in this current iteration of the internet is utilizing private services like Facebook, like Twitter, like the podcasting service on iTunes, to disseminate public speech. The main resources that someone would access are privately owned, and they can follow whatever guidelines, whatever terms of service. They can rewrite those terms of service. They can rewrite your end user licensing agreement at any time. So where I'm torn is I don't like Alex Jones. I think he's a knob. I think he disseminates conspiracy theories. I think he muddies the water on sensitive issues. I think he is a disinformation agent. And I think the amount of energy it takes to re-educate the population of people who listen to his podcast is formidable. Because he can spout off whatever he wants, and he's got a built-in audience that are going to follow him. But to try and persuade those audience members with actual facts or with real information or anything contrary is phenomenally difficult. This type of conversation in the modern political age is going to be a really difficult one for us to untangle, is going to be a very difficult one for us to unravel. We need to be very sensitive and very sensitive about how we engage with bad actors, because this is what makes discourse so polarizing and so difficult to achieve. Every time I talk about net neutrality, I can go through my my comments that are automatically held by Google, my comment moderation, and if someone's not calling me names, then there's likely a death threat in there somewhere, because I'm talking about net neutrality and I'm speaking positively about net neutrality. I'm pretty confident I'm going to get something similar because I put Alex Jones in the title of this video. I'm sort of doing that clickbaitiness by design. Where I'm also concerned is we need a better way to shame bad actors, not to hide bad actors. I kind of like the idea of an Alex Jones podcast being public and front and center and a little in your face, if only so that we can mock and ridicule that type of speech. I feel if we hide Alex Jones from potential consumers, we will actually embolden a group of people who are perfectly happy to operate in the shadows or operate without any kind of publicity. I feel like we will further encourage a media narrative about how we're trying to silence this, and he gets to play the victim card. That actually, I think, emboldens and empowers him. I don't think it minimizes him. I don't think it reduces him, especially when we've got multiple headlines pointing to this Alex Jones character, and now more people are going to be inclined to give his show a listen because they'll want to see, well, why is this person being targeted? Why is this show being pulled? What is so salacious? And most of his podcast is just going to sound like angry conservative ranting. But then when he gets into things like crisis actors and gay frogs, if he manages to convince even some impressionable individuals, then that does us a huge disservice as a society. It does us a huge disservice as a community. So I understand and I appreciate why these companies are making the public moves that they are. It's a popular move. For anyone who's a passionate fan of the Alex Jones podcast who might catch this part of my podcast, I would ask you why you continue to follow a commentator who publicly and in court under oath, with the advisement of his legal counsel, has said that all of his political ramblings are basically theater, that he's basically an actor, especially when you go through and you look at his paternity cases. He admits that nothing he really says he holds as truth, but he uses this to drum up fear, to drum up division, and to sell products. So he's scummy. He's a scumbag. I don't think we should be watching him. I don't think we should be giving him as much attention as he's sort of accrued. But I have a hard time following this move beyond just the schadenfreude of Apple and Facebook pulling his channel, pulling his podcast. I don't think it's going to have a positive effect on communication. I think it's going to have a negative effect on the divisiveness, on the discourse, and it's going to embolden a really ugly section of our society. So I don't know. I mean, there have been a ton of people already leaving comments while I've been sort of soapboxing there, and I'm going to scroll up a little and see what you guys have to say about this. But I'd be very curious to see. Excuse me. I'd be very curious to see what you have to say about this, because I feel like there are enough people who disagree with me on things like net neutrality, but have done so respectfully on this podcast, that I'm not sure how to handle this. How do we handle people who purposely try to muddy the waters on sensitive topics? People who actively and knowingly spread disinformation in a way to maintain divisiveness and controversy. From Kyle Netherwoods, free speech doesn't mean you have to advertise his content on your website's homepage. Renato Laporte, censorship isn't the way. This is also why the European program to fight fake news will fail hard. Again, I'm very sensitive to some type of body determining what's real and what's not, when in this age, I really feel we should be trying to build initiatives for citing sources, for better search, and for empowering users to utilize those kinds of tools. But that's a really sticky topic. Is do you believe that the citizenry will take advantage of tools like that to properly educate themselves, or are they going to just seek out confirmation bias sources? For it, I only remember Alex Jones as a weird protein shake seller. I mean, that's what he is. He uses this anger and this outrage and this character like he's in, some type of 70s anti-government movie, that he's this huge victim that's speaking truth to power to sell crap, and literally crap. Aditya Anil, I have not seen his fidget spinner video. I'm going to have to look that up after we're off. Let's see. Steve DeRoche, you and Alex Jones should do a podcast together. Well, I'm not big enough to be on his radar, and I really don't want to be on his audience's radar beyond what I'm already doing now. From Renato Laporte, people who believe him will get even a stronger feeling about what he's saying, with the belief that they are trying to silence him. Yeah, I agree with that. from Tech Leathercraft. Yep, same reason that free speech, even for the KKK, is important. We need to know they exist. And this has been one of my biggest problems with my era, when I was a kid, of political correctness. The PC movement of the 90s, I think it was empowering to community groups like mine. As a young, pale-skinned, Hispanic, Latino kid, I finally got to see people who looked like me and sounded like my family in popular media. But at the same time, we didn't really address some of the core rot of communities that were a little unseemly or maybe a little racist. We didn't really address that community notion. We just kind of swept some people under the rug. And I think that played into a growing trend of recruitment that has been taking place since the end of the Vietnam War. There was was it a Radio Lab, or was it I forget what podcast it was now, but this journalist who went and started examining these churches and these religious sects in the United States, and then some of these community movements from people that have been indoctrinated by KKK and fascist ideology. We've been seeing this as a growing community since the 60s. And especially in my era, in the 90s, we did a great job of just sort of sweeping it under the rug and making it look like things had been better, but not really addressing the problems for those communities and trying to find the educational outlets to bring them into the 20th century. And this is another move where in the digital age, in the 21st century, I fear something similar could happen, where we push these individuals, we push these players underground. That doesn't stop them from recruiting. It doesn't stop them from sharing bad ideas, and it emboldens a media narrative that they rely on to find impressionable people. Ronald Collins, YouTube already started it by demonetizing mostly everything they don't agree with, and that's been frustrating too. Again, there's so much speech that I'll disagree with. There's so much speech that I find extremely objectionable. I don't think businesses and corporations should be in charge of classifying what is or isn't hate speech. I feel that's like pornography, and I feel like that's an argument for courts and for lawyers. The Supreme Court, I don't know what pornography, I can't classify pornography, but I'll know it when I see it. Some frustrating aspects here. From Hadi, I'm into hearing conspiracy theories and hate Alex Jones's guts, yet I still don't think censorship is the way. Steve DeRoche, I don't know anyone that actually believes what Alex says. I don't either, but there has to be some group of people that does, and to the point where they'll sell things where they'll buy his products to keep him on the air. Aditya Anil, the AI could suppress notifications when it gets enough flags, dislikes on a video instead of a human body. Why not let AI do it? That could potentially be some solution. I think the problem is you then have an escalating arms race where if you don't like something, you can go to Fiverr and buy a whole bunch of bots to downvote a video, and then the AI will say, oh, well, look, this video got downvoted a whole bunch, so now let's pull it. Again, I want to find, instead of trying to find ways to silence people we don't like, I want to find ways to empower a better spread of correct information. And this is a major aspect of where our media has really let us down, is in easily, simply, and directly countering bad information with good information, because it takes so much energy to reconvince someone what facts really are after they've decided to side with someone like an Alex Jones. Nicholas Cincinnati, the fairness doctrine, all in caps. Dude, I am so with you on bringing back the fairness doctrine. Got a lot of others popping up in the comics here. From Money at Juan Carlos Bagnell at Some Politics Inside Guy. On that, I'm going to take one more little sip of water here from. I already did this one here. Let's do this other gratuitous merch ASMR sip from this mug right here in green, or kind of a mustardy green, but it's still green. Man, that is a delicious mug. I mean, the water just tastes so much better. That is not true. That was a lie. So, I got a number of tweets coming in from people. There are some other things that we want to talk about. This first one I want to get to. We can let the politics go. We talked about the FCC. We talked about Alex Jones. I think we've done enough politics for a while. Let's get back to some fun tech. So this is from Tyler Bublitz, TBubs45 on Twitter. At SomeGadgetGuy, question for you, Juan. With Samsung seeming to leak the specs of the Note 9, is Samsung trying to state that specs don't matter? What things we added, that's what makes the difference. Just a thought, and would love to hear yours. Folks in the live chat, or anyone who's listening to this video and you want to send me a message, what are you guys thinking about the Note 9? I've been doing a lot of podcasts with people trying to sum up their feelings on the Note. And the main point I keep coming back to is I want the Note to be a vanguard product, but if it can't be the boldest phone of Samsung's lineup, pushing the furthest into new specs, new territory, new design, new features, then what I'd really love to see the Note become is a king of its niche product. So if the Note is only going to be a Galaxy S with an S Pen, then I want Samsung to refine what it means to be a productivity device in much the same way that I really do enjoy using phones like the BlackBerry. This is not an all-rounder smartphone. This is a top-tier communications device focused on productivity, communication, texting, messaging, and also phone calls. Great battery life, and it's one of the most flexible Android devices I've ever used, especially in terms of customizing every single key on the keyboard to do exactly what you want it to be. If Samsung is going to make this play that the Note is now the productivity phone, then I want them to really own up to that. Not just make it a Galaxy S with an S Pen. I want them to address all of the little things that we might find lacking about a phone for hardcore business travel users. If that's battery life, if that's RAM, if that's software management, if that's expanded apps and services, if that's better capabilities for products like DeX, then that's what I want them to focus on. I don't know many Note fans now who are really concerned. And again, I'm talking Note fans, not people who like big screen Samsung phones, people who really dig into S Pen and productivity and all the additional services that go into the Note. Those people aren't going to care to have slightly more screen to bezel and have a notch and make the phone cuter and prettier. Those people want baller companion devices that help them get their work done. That's key. That's critical. The fact that the Note now has a smaller battery than the Galaxy S is a travesty for those types of individuals. Where is our Note with the 4,000 milliamp hour battery? Hopefully we get it for the Note 9. After we've seen some of those specs leak, that seems like it's on target. A Note with more RAM so that you can take better advantage of services like DeX. Not so that you can play graphics intense games and do speed tests and speed runs, so that you can run desktop grade portable applications on a true monitor with a mouse and keyboard. That's the kind of thing that's really going to move the needle on the Note. I think the Note needs to become a less exciting phone, a less fashionable phone, and become a more productive phone, and that's my take on it. So let's see what you guys have to say in the chat. From Money, wait for the Galaxy S10 or Galaxy 10 or whatever it's going to be called. I mean, that's not a bad play unless you're on like a Note 5. Again, I always say go with the phone that you can upgrade to. If you need to upgrade, go with the best that you can upgrade to in that time, and then just stop paying attention to future tech announcements for a while. From Sean Heron, I have an S9 Plus. I used to have a Note 8. I'm not upgrading. And I know a lot of people that have made that switch because the Note used to be the big screen phone. So you would buy it despite the S Pen, not because of the S Pen. And if you don't need the S Pen, the S9 Plus is way better for price, performance, having less custom software running in the background. There are a ton of services that Samsung needs to add to a Note to keep that S Pen ready to go at a moment's notice. I think that's definitely the smarter play. From Daivat, A little expensive for my taste. Also, don't like large screen phones. Samsung should try making a 7.9-inch 4:3 aspect ratio flagship Note. Then people would go crazy in buying it. Well, that's a tablet, and they have had like I think I've got one down there. I should bring it out and do like a revisited. You know, like, oh, this is the new Note. Just kidding. But yeah, I think, what is it? The Galaxy Tab 4 is the one that they just came out with. That's also got a bunch of S Pen stuff. I can't remember. There's too many stuff for my brain to just memorize all the time. From Sean Heron, it needs to be something of the quality of a Porsche Mate RS. That is a sexy phone, but I wouldn't put Samsung design that far behind Porsche. Aditya Anil, Note 9 could make a better monitor mode, bigger battery, and dedicated peripherals like keyboard case and battery pouch, since the S Pen now has a battery, kind of like Moto Mods. And then someone else, let me find it, from Cheryl, Samsung should introduce the DeX laptop dock for the Note, something like the Razer phone and the laptop dock. So Cheryl, Aditya, you guys are reading my mind. I produced a video yesterday that was an open letter to Motorola. I'm not going to go into my Motorola Z3 reactions here because that video will go live tomorrow morning on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/wombagnell. Where I go through a number of my reservations regarding the announcement of the Moto Z3. And one of those is why we haven't seen them take better advantage of a modular magnetic phone interface situation. Samsung with DeX, Razer with Project Linda. We want to see more flexibility for phone design and more variety of phone use. Huawei, you plug a USB adapter into a Huawei phone. I don't have my HDMI adapter. Why don't I? Oh, here it is. I plug this into a Huawei. This was a $20 cable. And then I plug an HDMI input into a monitor or a TV. And then a desktop interface with windowed apps shows up on that monitor. And it even has like a little port where you can charge the phone while you use it with that HDMI mode. And it's awesome. I want more stuff like that. I want to see more adaptation like that. I'm tired of the phone just only being, touch square, get app, glowing rectangle, and we can make the rectangle skinnier, and we can put less of a border around the rectangle so the rectangle's even more fragile. Samsung with the Note could make a big play towards laptop-style usage. Especially Samsung has great laptop engineering teams. They make some nice laptops. Make a Samsung laptop that is powered by your Galaxy Note, and then increases things like you get a bigger battery, you get some nice cooling features, you get more ports, maybe some better bus speeds, I don't know, anything that you can use to connect peripherals and stuff, and then you have a full desktop grade experience ready to go. And they'll even partner with Microsoft, so you'll have Microsoft Office and OneDrive and all of those things that you need to get your work done, and then you can also play games with it, maybe Fortnite. You could play Fortnite from a laptop dock. That would be epic. And I think this would be way more of a benefit to productivity-focused, productivity-minded consumers than like a foldable phone. I don't think foldable phones really solve that many problems in comparison to how many compromises they might introduce. So, we played with this stuff, the lap dock back in the day with the Atrix. We've seen this new kind of new focus on trying to find this type of modular lifestyle approach. And that's where I hope we'll see Samsung go. I think they can make a huge play for that type of functionality, that kind of service. And then that to me would sell a Note way better than just, well, it's got more megapixels on the camera and it's got more giggle flips on the CPU. And, so you can load your app a millionth of a second faster than you could before. So we'll see. Excuse me, I always hate it when I have to kind of like clear my nose, but at an hour and a half of talking, biology starts to take over. And on that note, I'm gonna drink just a little bit more water. We had a couple other tweets that I wanted to get to. And let me scroll down. So from @FatProduce, I'd love to hear your take on the current state of mobile tech now that we are over halfway through the year. So I actually kind of struggled with this question, Andrew. Where are we in 2018 with phones and services and technology? And this has been kind of eye-opening for me because, you know, I properly left Pocket Now a couple months ago. I really wanted to branch out, diversify, and talk about more products than just phones. And they were in a state of transition that at the time I couldn't talk about, but, you know, they got bought out by XDA. Brandon Miniman is back at the helm. Josh Vergara hosting the podcast. Finally, they have a proper podcast host again. So I'm happy to see that. And I think Jules was doing a great job of keeping that afloat. But it's always better to have someone to play off of, unlike this rambling affair. So moving over to hosting a show on Newegg and getting to play with desktop gear again, with laptops again, with gaming tech again, has been so much fun. So much fun that I feel like I might be a little unfairly harsh on the smartphone landscape as we find it in 2018. I do not believe that we've seen substantial improvement to phones, phone hardware, and phone services over the last 3 years. From 2015 to 2016, I think, was the last solid improvement. When we got out of the Qualcomm 808 Snapdragon days and we got into the 820, since then, I feel like we've only been seeing iterative, tiny baby step improvements and refinements. We haven't seen any companies making substantial progress in really improving the user services relationship. I don't believe that skinnier screens with smaller bezels and all-glass design have made our phones better. I think they've made our phones prettier, and I think they've made our phones more fragile, and I think they've made our phones less complete. I'm actually planning a video talking about gaming on Android. The OnePlus 6 is a baller phone if you're into mobile gaming. It's fast, it's lean, it's powerful, and it's kind of miserable to control certain types of games, especially if the games only do a moderately good job of resizing for a 2:1 aspect ratio. So my favorite game right now is Exiled Kingdoms. It's this crazy Diablo clone, terrible DOS-era graphics, silly storyline elements, fantasy, role-playing, dungeon crawler. It's awesome. I love this game. But when you have this 2:1 aspect ratio screen and all of your controls are played out to the edges of the phone and you don't have bezels, my thumbs can't stay reaching the edges of the screen to play this game for more than a couple minutes before I have to switch. And I'm controlling a game which requires a little precision with my fingertips in this weird like claw hand setup. That to me is not progress. This has absolutely soured my experience of using the OnePlus 6 for gaming, which it's great at in terms of horsepower, but not so good at in terms of form factor and ergonomics. And I'm actually now playing more again on my Mate 10. The Mate 10, even just introducing the slightest little forehead and chin bezels on the front, gives me just that little bit more clearance that I can hold the phone better to play the games I like to play. It's silly that millimeters of difference like that have actually had a significant impact on how I like to use these phones, but it makes me really wish I had a Razer phone. It makes me really wish I was using a Razer and having those really chunky forehead and chin bezels, because not only then would I have more space to hold the phone properly and game, but that space would be useful for something, and having those front-firing speakers. That would be an amazing benefit. And I'm really frustrated that we've kind of jumped onto these notch trends. You know, like this is the P20 Pro that I stole from TK. That we've jumped on these notch trends to do something fashionable. It's really pretty to see less bezel and more screen, but it's not really practical. The devices are more fragile, and then they're incomplete. You have to add bezel. I have to add to the phone to make it a complete experience. And that's terrible. Like, I shouldn't have to do this. Makes me even more sad that we don't have a Galaxy Active this year. A Galaxy S9 Active would have been my perfect phone, except for the fact that it doesn't exist. It would have been my phone of the year, except for that one pesky problem that it's not real. From Sean Heron, yeah, playing games on the Galaxy S9 Plus is so much easier with a case on the phone. Sherrill, the chin bezels do kind of make it comfy for holding. How is the experience, though? Gabaletta, we need a 16 by 11 phone. Let's see. We've got a couple other comments here. From podcast age. Hey Juan, first live stream I'm catching, but Mr. Mobile mentioned you helped select his microphone. Great job. So that is one of my favorite all-time microphone pairing success stories. Michael Fisher, Mr. Mobile, I replaced him at Pocket Now, or I succeeded him. I did not replace him. I merely succeeded him at Pocket Now. When he was getting set up to do the Mr. Mobile thing, he didn't realize that I was a voiceover casting director, and we had a couple conversations about recording tech, and then he asked me for a pick, and we did I think we did a couple tests on just some different solutions that might work for him, but I really thought his voice would be well paired with the AKG C414. It's a $1,000 multi-pattern large diaphragm condenser microphone, one of my all-time favorite microphones, and I think also just such a shame that Samsung doesn't seem to be investing much effort or energy into high-end AKG. So Samsung bought out Harman and AKG, and they've been using the labels. Like, you can get Samsung earbuds with really pretty AKG labels on them, but they're not really AKG headphones. They're Samsung headphones. That's fine. They're still good headphones, but they're not AKGs. Just, AKG in name only. So I helped him pick out the C414. He fired it up. I think it works great. I think his voice sounds awesome on that microphone. But the other funny thing is when he was reviewing the Mkbhd, it's a portable Bluetooth recorder, which has a very nice large diaphragm condenser built into the microphone, but it's supposed to be portable. So it's a type of microphone technology you would only want to use in studio, but they've made it rugged and you can take it out in the field. I have a video review on it. He has a video review on it, and I show up in his video review just to kind of help him talk about some of the techie stuff about recording tech. I got in touch with the Mkbhd team, and it turns out the guy who started the Mkbhd project was formerly an engineer at AKG. And so when I mentioned in one of the videos that the rig inside the mic is very similar to the shock mount that's built inside the mic that Michael Fisher uses, that's what got me on their radar, is because they purposely designed it to mimic how the 414 has a little shock mount built into the microphone. So it was just a proud of me moment, like, oh, I actually do know what I'm talking about. I said, this mic looks a lot like the 414. An AKG engineer reached out to me and it's like, well, yeah, because we built it to look like the 414. I was like, yeah, I rock. Proud of me. So yeah, that was a pretty good win for me. Getting back to some of these others, Goran Petrovic, I'm devastated that HTC gave up on the One series. I simply don't see a phone for me on the market today. And the HTC 10, the last true HTC with great headphone output, a really interesting split dual speaker arrangement. I would love to see HTC get back to like the classic One days, the One M8. You could do a dual camera setup like the One M8 and do it right for this year. Metal body, really clean it up, do something really fancy like that. I would love to see HTC revisit that. And then also you would have front-facing speakers, which would solve my problem of thumbs cramping while I try and play my favorite games. Let's see. From Aditya Anil. Ooh, Tony Stark, Mr. Michael Fisher, does have a really good voice and shares your passion for Windows and offbeat non-mobile tech. That's one of the things coming this week. I'm going to be doing some auto tech too. I got a really cool dash cam car computer that I'm going to be talking about sometime this week. From Sean Heron, bought that recording app you were using on the Mate 10 Pro, by the way. Audio Evolution is a phenomenal recording app. I definitely recommend it. From FE1538C, Glassback is probably so cheap, therefore everyone is using it. I'm sure it's a number of things, but I ultimately think glass took off in popularity because it's shiny. That's it. You know, it's sparkly. It looks pretty, and I think that's now somehow become premium, which is dumb. It's really dumb that glass is considered premium. From Podcast Stage, I had no idea that AKG was purchased by Samsung. That's crazy. I need to try the C414 XL2 and the XLS. I think Michael has the XLS. It's a little flatter, which is my preference. Definitely stick with the XLS. I think the XL2 is a little too hyped. Ever since the TL2 days, whenever the AKG makes a vocals mic, I think it sounds harsh and brittle, but the ULS and the XLS are phenomenal. From Divat, do you think Mkbhd will start a smartphone company? I hope not. Let's see. Let me take another sip of water. From Sean Heron, I still have my OG HTC One and it still works. Steve DeRoche, one day HTC will be great again. I don't know. I'll be really surprised if HTC survives as a smartphone manufacturer over the next couple years. I think Google acquiring some of their top designers was the first step in slowly dissolving HTC. That the Vive will go off and be its own VR company, that the phones will probably exist as a licensing or a labeling. So you go to Foxconn, you say, hey, I want a really cheap phone, and I want to slap an HTC label on it, and I'll call it the Butterfly 3 or something like that. And then you get an HTC phone, which is a sort of disposable, free, no on contract kind of a phone. I'll be very surprised if HTC can recover in a meaningful way to be a top-tier competitor again with the current state of things. I think the true HTC DNA is now over at Google. And we can see that Google isn't really doing much with that talent. What with the humongous notch that's probably going to arrive on the Pixel 3. If the rumors are true, if we see a 3-pixel phone strategy from Google, like, why not? Why not just copy Apple entirely? Just let's stop pretending. You know, Apple has 3 phones. We'll have 3 phones. Apple has the iPad. We'll have some sort of Pixel book or Pixel tab or something like that. Why even bother trying to innovate or make great hardware? Because we're a software company. We'll just make great software, and you'll run that phone on a really ugly looking piece of hardware, and we'll take out the headphone jack because we can, and then we'll sell Pixel Buds, which are terrible, and that's great. We'll be Google. We'll be awesome. It's just so frustrating. From Cheryl, we may see HTC become either like Nokia, HMD, or TCL with BlackBerry. I really think we will. I really think that that's going to be the future for the HTC label. But the HTC talent, I hope, will start to have more of an influence on Google, on Pixel design, because I am not looking forward to spending time with this next generation of Pixels. So from Cedric Owens, I know I'm being unfair, unrealistic, and probably outright stupid in thinking this way. I don't think you are. But I'll never buy another anything Huawei. After my 6P experiences with the company, I'll never buy again. I can completely appreciate that. I have a lot of friends that feel the same way about LG. I have one buddy in particular who adored his LG G4 until it went through the boot loop. LG fought him on it, Verizon fought him on it, and he ended up going back to Samsung. I think long after he'd gotten a Galaxy S7, they finally got around to saying, okay, well, we can replace the phone, or we can do this for you, we can do that for you. And he was like, F off, I'm done. The 6P, I think, suffered from that era. I would be careful. You're not wrong. If you have concerns over a company, the nice thing about Android land is you have plenty of competition to choose from. If you don't want to go with a Huawei, you can go with any other number of manufacturers that are putting out some great products today. You don't even have to just jump on Team Samsung. I mean, a current LG is a pretty formidable phone these days, and I'm feeling like it will definitely win my showdown with TK Bay. That's just a little dig at TK. But the thing I would be careful of, if you are basing your frustration with a company on any product that was built during the Qualcomm 810 days, I'd just be a little careful. The Snapdragon 810 was a terrible chipset. It's one of the worst things Qualcomm has ever done to an industry. It absolutely wrecked a ton of players in the smartphone space. It destroyed LG with the Flex. It destroyed HTC with the One M9. It really messed up Google with the Nexus 6P. Their recovery for Google's recovery for the Nexus 6P was to rebrand as the Pixel. That's how much it's affected so many players. And the only company that made it out of that era, not only unscathed but improved, was Samsung, because that was the only year in the United States that Samsung did not use a Qualcomm chipset in the Galaxy. That's the only year we've gotten the Exynos. Well, I mean, since the original Hummingbird days of the Galaxy S. That's the only year we got an Exynos chipset in the modern smartphone era. And so Samsung did really well because their Exynos brutalized the Qualcomm 810 that year and the Qualcomm 808. So again, I think you're perfectly reasonable in having a concern over a manufacturer like Huawei based on how the 6P went down, but I wouldn't completely write them off if the phone was built on the Snapdragon 810. That's more Qualcomm's fault than it is Huawei's fault or Google's fault. Ultimately, the buck should stop with Google because it was a Nexus phone, and Google was responsible for contracting out how the Nexus should be built. That, to me, is more Google's fault than Huawei's. But again, I'd at least kind of push pause on any company that got burned by the Qualcomm 810. Aditya Anil, I'm slowly trying to convert my dad from his iPhone to a Key 2. He does seem to have a taste for the keyboard and seems to fit BlackBerry's target audience. We'll keep you updated. Definitely give me the rundown on that. I'm always curious to see if a phone like a BlackBerry can make a meaningful attempt at a new consumer today, or a new consumer. You're talking about your dad. My dad ended up going with the Pixel 2, not the Pixel 2 XL. He didn't like the Pixel 2 XL's design. He wanted something with bezels. He thought it made the phone more durable, and he wanted something smaller, because my dad is super smart. And I also thought the smaller Pixel 2 was the better buy of the two phones for last year. But he was seriously considering the Key 1. I just had some reservations with how he used his phone, that it might have been a little underpowered. For a Key 3, if we get another BlackBerry out next year, I will make a much harder play for him to replace his Pixel 2 with a Key 3. So many comments on here, like from Hadid Tamini, the 808, 810 were the culprit boot loops, but the way LG Huawei handled it, they deserve that backlash. I agree there too. They did not handle those situations well, though we can point to the cause of the situation being at Qualcomm. Let's see. From Steve DeRoche, now that Android Pie is out, how long do you think it will take OEMs to update their phones? Billions of years. The sun will expand, engulfing the earth in flames before any phones currently running Android 8 will be updated to Android 9. You heard it here first, folks. It's never going to happen. I don't know. I'm not super hyped up on the race anymore. Google is in that tough spot where they have to lock down more of the flexibility of Android to get manufacturers to push out updates faster. But that also kills some of the charm of Android. So we're kind of darned if we do and darned if we don't. If we expect more compliance with Google rules, then we get a less diverse ecosystem, and we get more situations like the fine that Google had to pay for forcing manufacturers to not put out forked builds of Android. That's the biggie. That I think was the big no-no, was you can have Android, but it's incomplete without all of these Google services. And the only way to get Android and the Google services is to promise you won't ever make a phone like the Fire Phone. That to me is extremely anti-competitive and really isn't an open ecosystem. But you need that if you want manufacturers to be compelled to update their phones more aggressively. So I don't know, but I think it's going to be a while. I think a few players like, OnePlus, I think will be ahead of the curve. I used to say Huawei was okay at some of these updates, but the way they're handling their North American phones has been very disappointing. I'm 3 small updates behind on my Mate 10 Pro, and I just can't get them. I know they exist. I can't flash them. I can't download them. So I've been very frustrated by that, and I'm hoping Huawei will see the light on at least maintaining the products that they've already sold. I think it's going to be a bummer. I think it's going to be a while before we see any substantial market shift change on that. Even with the recent updates to like Project Treble, I just don't think we're going to see a ton of manufacturers really aggressively updating their products. I think we're going to see the same consumer market where current phones will get updates after new phones launch with that software. So even for Samsung, like the Note 9 is coming out with Oreo. It's not going to launch with Pi. So that's going to be really frustrating. And let's scroll down. Lots of comments here, guys. I've missed so many of these. From Fat Produce, have you tried the firmware finder for Huawei? I have, and there after an update, there's something about firmware finder that breaks on the Mate 10. So I think the Mate 9 is a little different in how they've locked down the kernel. The Mate 10 doesn't seem to play the same game. So I haven't been able to force the OTAs with firmware finder on the Mate 10 like I used to. From B. Floyd, on another note, with Google issues within the EU and Epic Games, I think we may see major changes in Android or a push of a newer OS by Google. I think this is where we're going to see... I agree with you, B. Floyd, by the way. I think this is where we're going to see whatever project is called, Project Fuchsia, a next-generation operating system from Google, which is probably going to be a lot more like iOS. A lot more of a walled garden. Probably a very specially crafted and worded licensing agreement with how manufacturers use it. Android will exist as sort of a carryover for a short period of time, but then newer premium devices will probably migrate over into some new interface, some new UI, some new operating system. And I hope it's Google's attempt at bridging desktop and mobile use, like combining the better ideas behind Chrome OS with the more flexible app arrangement of Android, and then unifying that for one code base could be really compelling. I think it could be really interesting in the same way that we see Microsoft trying to work backwards, trying to make Windows more mobile friendly. That I think is going to be the race. And Apple will just be sort of, out playing in the mud with iOS and OS X being completely separate ecosystems that they don't really have any interest in sharing. And we got some other questions there. So, folks, I'm starting to lose my voice, so I'm going to start wrapping this up. We didn't quite hit 2 hours for my return podcast, and I do apologize for that. But for just another second, I'm going to do another gratuitous merch shot of me drinking from this awesome coffee mug right here. Again, just lip-smackingly delicious for all of those of you who are like me with hardcore misophonia and hate mouth noises in your podcasts. The Mkbhd mugs are now available to buy. They went on sale over the weekend. I did have a little flash sale where they were a little cheaper. They're full price now. But I do want to put this out there where on my Patreon page, I do have a special promo code that someone could use to get 10% off a purchase of a Mkbhd mug. Now, that's not to say that you have to join my Patreon if you want to find this promo code. You could reach out to any number of my current Patreon supporters and beg them or bribe them to tell you what the promo code is. So that could be one way. If you would like to sport your favorite tech malpropism, where I like to replace the word megapixel with the word megapickle, you too could rock that on a mug and save a little cash if you can find who maybe has access to that promo code. I'm going to leave that as a mystery for you to go and harass all of my patrons on Patreon. Or you could join the Patreon. You could do that too. You could support the channel really inexpensively. I've got the P20 Pro camera and audio reviews coming up. So we're going to be doing this real soon. I'm finally going hands-on with one of the most important smartphone camera releases of 2018. But I'm also going to be doing my audio review because I think the audio is going to be terrible. I think it's going to be bad audio for such an expensive device compared to some of the other players. And then be on the lookout because this is all part of a challenge, a pair of videos that TK Bay and I are going to be working on, talking about our favorite phones of 2018 so far. So he took my precious LG G7 and its amazing DAC and its phenomenal speaker and boombox mode, and he gave me his P20 Pro with its awesome camera, and we're going to have a huge challenge, a huge showdown to see who actually had the better phone for 2018. And if you're watching this live stream, then you know I'm totally going to win. The G7 is obviously the better all-around phone than the P20. Definitely. Huh? So we'll see. It's going to be a fun showdown. I'm going to be going out tonight to do all of my night photography for this. I already shared my literally the first time I hit the shutter button from the P20 Pro. I already shared on my Patreon. It's an incredible shot considering I didn't know anything about this camera. I was very impressed. And then moving forward, this is another one. It's going to be a plug for the Patreon, and I apologize that this is so Patreon heavy at the end of this podcast. But if you're on my Patreon tomorrow, I found an old cheap phone. This is an Asus Zenfone 3 laser. This is not a fancy phone. This is a Qualcomm 430 with 32 gigabytes of storage, but it has a laser, and lasers are cool. But it's not really a contest, it's not really a giveaway, but I'm just going to be giving it out to someone in my Patreon because I know we all have family or friends, or maybe you just want a cheap beater weekender phone, like you don't mind if it gets abused or something like that. And I just think like this isn't really a phone that I want to take the time to package up and ship and sell on Swappa when there's a community of people out there that might have a better use for it. If you know someone who needs a phone, if you have a family member who needs a phone, or like I said, if you want a backup phone that you don't mind busting up or abusing, I'm going to be giving that away tomorrow on my Patreon. If anyone even wants it. If anyone wants it, leave a comment. I'll use a random number generator to pick a winner. But it's not really like a big contest. I'm just going to be setting it up here. So we've come to that part of the podcast where I'm going to randomly scroll back up through the chat on Periscope and on YouTube. And I'm going to close my eyes here for just a second because we need to give away. Oh, you know what? While I scroll, let's do this. No, that's not it. There we go. And I'm going to go back into screen share. So I'm going to scroll up while we watch this awesome video trailer for Forged Battalion. An amazing real-time strategy game, which I got an extra Steam key for. And let's see who's going to win it. We've got really heavy YouTube comments, but I'm getting some periscopes in there. I'm going to close my eyes and stop. So Eddie 2, Electric Boogaloo. Eddie 2 left the comment, back of that P20 looking super shiny. Eddie 2, I'm going to have to find some way of verifying who you are. Shoot me a comment on if you can with like a Twitter handle. Please don't post your email address publicly. We don't want to do that. But Eddie 2, you are the winner of Forged Battalion, the Steam code for Forged Battalion. And I'll try and get you hooked up with that. Let me scroll down to Eddie 2. I could use it to take pictures from the book I just bought to learn to take better pictures. So I'm rewriting a chapter of my book, my photography book. I've been talking about this for a while, but now that I actually have the P20 Pro, I am rewriting a section of my photography book, Take Better Photos, Smartphone Photography for Noobs. So I'll be updating it with info on the P20 Pro. So let's see, Eddie 2 at, okay, I'm copying your Twitter right now, and I'm going to shoot you a private message on Twitter, and I will hook you up with that Forged Battalion Steam code. And thanks everyone for jumping into this this live chat, this live stream. I really appreciate all of the support and the commentary and the chatter, and especially for some of the. I know we had some pretty heavy topics this week between the FCC and with the Alex Jones move. So I really appreciate those of you who disagree with me that are still willing to join this conversation in a civil fashion so that we can have some kind of meeting of the minds. Anytime that I've really dug into the comments on these videos where people are calling me out or say that, you know, I don't know what I'm talking about or that I have some idea wrong, after we get through that initial confrontation and we really get into the conversation, I find that we're usually not that far apart. Anyone who's willing to rationally discuss these problems, we've all agreed that there are problems. That's something that I think we need to encourage our politicians to take notice of. We know there are problems. We just might disagree on some of the solutions. Right now, the people who have been elected to represent us can't even agree that there are problems, let alone what those problems are. So moving forward, especially as I cover dicier political, tech, politics types of stories, I'm going to try to make an effort to listen more while I ramble on and share my soapboxy opinions on things, but to listen more and to join those types of conversations in earnest, in fairness, and with respect. And those of you who do likewise, I think we'll get along, and I think we'll have a good time doing it. You know, we can arrive at a solution, or at least a commentary on a solution that can make everything better for all of us. So I'm going to wrap up that podcast on that hopeful note. Eddie2, I just followed you on Twitter. Shoot me a DM, and I can shoot over that Steam code. I am so stoked to see more conversation around Forged Battalion. I love this game, and I love these developers for making it. And moving forward, I think I'm going to try and do some more game streams on games I like rather than torturing myself with game streams on games that I don't like. Be on the lookout. Tomorrow, I am publishing my video, my open letter to Motorola about the Moto Z3. You can see my thoughts on that. Be on the lookout for the P20 Pro versus LG G7 challenge between me and TK Tomorrow, Fat Produce, Andrew Wallace in the live chat. We're going to be doing another Geek Book Club on a crazy indie fantasy novel that Andrew found called Barrow. You can find more info on SomeGadgetGuy.com, or you can look at the other previous episodes of the Geek Book Club where we talk about books, a book every month. So, and lastly, don't forget to pick yourself up a Mkbhd mug. If you can harass my Patreon subscribers to give you the promo code, you can save yourself 10% on a Mkbhd mug of your very own. So that should be super fun too. I'm going to take one more drink before I finish signing off. Oh, delicious. I mean, it's just so good. I mean, I can make this claim because apparently the FDA won't stop like anyone from saying it just makes everything better when you drink water out of a Mkbhd mug. So, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for watching, for subscribing, for sharing my content. There are ways that you can support production on this channel by going to SomeGadgetGuy.com, and at the top of my website, you will find a Support Some Gadget Guy link where you can find all kinds of cool ways to support production on this channel and also get yourself something cool. So it's mutually beneficial. You help me, I help you, and then we get to make more videos together, and it's super fun. I'll be back next week. Excuse me, water burp. I'll be back next week with another Monday morning tech chat show on the SGGQA podcast feed. And in the meantime, you can catch me on the Twitters, the Instagrams, the Facebooks. Shoot me those questions, shoot me those comments, shoot me those replies, because that helps me sort of plan out what I'm going to talk about for future podcasts. And I know I've been teasing it for a while, but I do have plans to get some interviews up on the show too. So be on the lookout for those. All right, folks, have a great tech week because we got it started off right. And I will catch you on next week's show. Be well.